So welcome to the world of Linux Mint. Today I'm going to also try a new approach. I'm going to try to get away from some of the more technical aspects because I keep hearing from some of you that says, I don't have any idea what you're talking about. So I'm going to try to put this into real world terms, what it will do for you, and then share with you some of my experiences with it as well. So let me know in the comments below what you think of this new format. Yeah, and I think that's what sets Linux Mint apart from the crowd, is it starts with an unparalleled user friendliness, and that user friendliness is pervasive. It's everywhere, from the development of the distribution itself to the support that's behind it. They have one of the most open and friendly user communities that I know of. I don't know about you, but when you can figure out things on your own, that's great. But sometimes you get stuck. How do I know? I've been there. Been there, done that. When I started out in Linux back in 1997, oh my God, it was horrible. The experience was terrible. There was very strict hardware rules that you had to build your system to. And if you deviated from that, your system wasn't even going to boot. All right, so let's talk about Linux Mint. Let's forget about all that. So it's pretty straightforward and it's intuitive. They have a long-term support strategy that will add patches to the current version out until 2025. Or 2026. There's kind of levels that they do for security patches, but they will go on and support it out to 2029. So you have a pretty long support window. But most people will probably upgrade. They upgrade about once every 2 years. They kind of follow the LTS strategy for Ubuntu. So yeah, Ubuntu just came out with 24.04 in April, and Linux Mint released their 22 version at the end of July. So yeah, it takes them a couple of months because they wait until they have a stable kernel and a distribution and a package base to work with. So Linux Mint uses kernel 6.8, and that has, you're probably going to notice that has, if you go out to the Linux archives, which is where the Linux Foundation posts all of the information about the latest kernels, you will see that Linux kernel 6.8 is no longer supported. Whoa, wait a minute. So you're saying that Linux 6.8 is the kernel of choice. It's going to be supported until 2029? How is that possible? Well, very simply, Canonical is the company behind Ubuntu, if you don't know that. And they have picked up the kernel support through 2029 for 6.8. So you don't have to worry. The Linux Foundation is cutting out the support for long-term releases because of the cost, so they say. So this means that Linux Mint users can continue to receive important security updates and bug fixes to both the packages and the kernel. So, and that comes for years to come. So yeah, and we'll talk more about some of those things, but Linux Mint has a software manager that has a treasure trove of applications, and I think they have 70,000 plus applications, and they support, I think, around 7,000 plus or minus some of games that you can get. Now, Linux has gone from the time I started this channel at 1.8% of the market share for OSs to, it's right now, as of the end of July, 4.5%. Now, maybe to you that's not a huge number, but to us, that's amazing. I mean, we haven't seen Linux grow this fast, this quick. And I think it has to do with two reasons. One, Microsoft is deconstructing Windows all by themselves by adding ads and adding painful things like, well, you've got to update your hardware in order to go to the next release. They're closing the door on Windows 10. And I saw a comment on the video about Windows 10 where one of the guys said, it ought to be mandatory that if they're going to do this, they have to drop the source code in open source. That would be cool. That won't happen. So whether you're seeking productivity tools or creative suites, even games. And Linux Mint is pretty well known for people using games on it, and it offers you a wealth of options. So if you're just somebody that you just want to turn on the machine, you just want it to work, you want to be able to go out and get a laptop that works, or you want to have an old laptop that you can't make it work on Windows anymore. What do? Well, maybe you put Linux Mint on it. So Linux Mint offers an extensive amount of customization that allows you, if you want, to tailor your desktop environment as much as you want. You can turn it into however you want it to look, whatever colors you want. Let's embark on a journey of exploration, and that is, what is a Linux distribution? Well, the Linux Foundation writes the kernel. That is the core of the operating system that manages your hardware. It manages the ability to launch and execute and end programs that are coming in and out of your system. But they don't build the tools or the applications that are used to actually do anything. A kernel by itself does absolutely nothing for you. All it does is it manages the hardware and allows you to boot up into it. But then you need some stuff that you can do, right? You need a browser. Maybe you need an email package. Maybe you need some applications to allow you to do that. Or maybe you need something to write documents, or you need a spreadsheet, or you need a database, or there's just this huge amount of things after that. Or maybe you're a developer. So that's where the distribution comes in. So the developers will work on their favorite applications, and then they package them up. And in most cases, that it'll either be going to Debian or going to Red Hat. Or Arch. So there's really three major channels. There's others. There's so many package managers today that it's hard to keep track of how many there are. But the three major ones are Arch and Red Hat and Debian. From there, Ubuntu draws their pool from Debian. They put their spin on it, they update it, they add stuff to it that Canonical thinks that they need, and they then build up their own package base. Linux Mint draws from those pools on the Debian and Ubuntu side to build a full distribution of applications, a desktop interface for you to have a GUI, and then they'll add a bunch of applications that they have curated that they know will work, and then they provide them to you. And they give you a store. Linux has always had a store where you can go and pick and choose what you want. Since Debian is one of the platforms which Canonical draws and Linux Mint draws, I think it's probably good that we start there. So why would you consider Debian? So Debian is kind of referred to as a universal operating system, meaning that it has strengths that lie in unparalleled flexibility, control, and stability. It is a playground for experienced users and system administrators who crave to complete customizations and learn more fine-grained control over their computing environments. But Debian doesn't do a lot for you out of the box. You have to do that. You have to build it up. It comes with a suite of things that you can start with, but you'll find that it's pretty bare bones when you're coming into it. In fact, Debian, because of its approach to building out hardware, it's often used, and I get this surprise all the time, it's like, Debian uses that? Debian is often chosen as the place where new hardware is introduced, particularly ARM machines. There's a couple of reasons for that. One, there's an organization called Linaro, and they do a lot of systems integration, and a lot of companies that are building systems on a chip or boards will come to them, and they always start with Debian. There's a lot of their developers that also run around. So if you like Pine and Pine 64 and some of the developers that also do work for Linaro also freelance and do work for the board manufacturers as well. And they will generally start with Debian, although there's some that have started, like Odroid starts with Ubuntu. But yeah, anyway, so Debian is also a favorite among security engineers. They want a good secure system, but they also want one that's stable. And Debian is not only known for its stability, but also its quick response whenever there is critical security flaws that are discovered. Well, I don't know how they are now, but they used it. They wouldn't mess around. But I think if you go out to the CVE database where they break down by operating system, you'll see Debian as number one. And I always hear, well, Debian must be a piece of crap because they always find all the flaws there. Exactly, because that's where all the security engineers are. So yeah, they're gonna check their systems first. Yep. So yeah, the total of security flaws discovered is usually higher on Debian than it is anyone else. So if you're interested in a version of Linux Mint that more closely aligns with Debian, you might want to take a look at Linux Mint DE. Linux Mint Debian Edition has all of the features of Linux Mint, but it also comes with all of the pros of Linux Mint itself, only it's just built on a Debian base. So LMDE usually comes out about a month or two after a new major release of Linux Mint. So we may see one by the end of August at the earliest, and maybe sometime in September at the latest. Generally, it's usually about 2 months. So since Linux Mint 22 came out at the end of July, I'm thinking, well, you might see something at the end of this month. Right now, if you go to download it, you'll get the Linux Mint 21 base for LMDE. So the reason why they chose LMDE was they were a little concerned that Canonical has these moments where they just kind of go off on the deep end and do weird things that everybody's like, why did you do that? I mean, that makes no sense at all. But that's kind of the way Canonical has been. They're never afraid to try something new, even though it may be like, what? What are you doing? So keep in mind that Debian's power and flexibility will come with a steeper learning curve, but that learning curve will be shortened by LMDE because there's two things that Linux Mint does, and this is amazing that they do this. First, it comes with a manual to help you not only set it up, but also learn how to customize it. And they're old-fashioned. I mean, I remember in the days when people released release notes, they were actually errata. And Linux Mint continues that tradition today. Most of them now, the release notes are really new features and new things that are in the release. But Linux Mint talks about, hey, here's some of the things that broke during the release. Here's some workarounds. Here's some things you may run into, and here's some things you might try to get around it. That, to me, is invaluable when you're running into problems, particularly trying to bring something new up on a Linux distribution. They're one of the few people that do that, and I'm grateful to them because often their hints will help in other Debian or Ubuntu-based distributions. So yeah, it's pretty amazing that they do that. So good on them, and I hope they always continue to do that. I know that that's a lot of work for them, but hey, it does pay off. So I think if you're a beginner and you prefer a more user-friendly experience, Linux Mint might be the better starting point because, I mean, you're going to have a larger base of people to draw from for help, right? Our next contender is MX Linux. That is a popular distribution that's known for its blend of speed, stability, and user-friendliness. It's actually based on Anti-X Linux, which Anti-X is an advanced distribution that's designed for experienced Linux users. So I think Linux Mint kind of aims at kind of the middle ground between, the extreme case of Anti-X and the ability to bring in like an intermediate Linux user up to a kind of let's take the next level up and get into higher performance systems that require more knowledge about how Linux works. I'm not saying I mean, Linux, I mean, I'll tell you the truth. MX is not one of the distributions that I am all that familiar with. I've spent a lot of time with Debian and Ubuntu and Fedora and Red Hat and several others of the more business ilk, but I have not spent the same amount of time with MX Linux. So I'm no expert on MX Linux. The reason why I'm including it here is that I'm kind of excited by the fact of what Anti-X kind of does. I'm interested in it personally, and I'd like to learn more about MX Linux. So you'll probably see some videos down the road that deal strictly with MX Linux because it boasts a collection of powerful system tools and simplify the configuration and maintenance tasks of a Linux desktop environment. So yeah, I mean, so that's kind of where I'm at with it. So compared to Linux Mint, though, MX Linux offers a slightly more hands-on experience. It encourages users to explore its customization options and system tools. While both distributions prioritize ease of use, MX Linux, I think, I mean, this is my opinion, is not a fact. So I think it leans more toward a do-it-yourself approach, and it empowers you to be able to fine-tune the system more to your perfection or more to your liking. So if you enjoy tinkering and want a fast and efficient desktop environment, MX Linux might be worth considering. And if you're looking like me of actually bridging into Anti-X, this might be a good step before you jump off into that. So the next one I want to consider is Pop! OS. So why Pop! OS? Well, that's a distribution that was developed by System 76. Originally, it was to cater to they sell laptops and servers, and they also sell desktop systems as well. So this OS was really meant to provide the distribution that supported their hardware at the same time. So you didn't run into compatibility issues. You had the hardware, you had the distribution, everything worked. System 76 recently released an alpha preview of Pop! OS 2404, which is based on Ubuntu 2404. I think the exciting part here is that this version also replaces GNOME desktop with an environment that System 76 calls Cosmic. Now, Cosmic is a desktop that's homegrown by System 76, and it's written in Rust. So Rust is a programming language that's been it's designed for system programming. It fixes some of the inherent flaws in the C compiler, and Rust has been steadily gaining in popularity. And even the Linux kernel even Linus has allowed Rust to be used to build parts of the Linux kernel. Cosmic, let's go back to Cosmic. Cosmic is designed to be workflow oriented. It incorporates features like tiling window managers. It also has keyboard-driven navigation. Pop! OS is optimized for productivity, and it offers, I think, an excellent amount of hardware support, even if it is not a System 76 hardware base. So anyway, if I compare Linux Mint to a more general purpose approach like Pop! OS, which caters to a specific niche of users who prioritize efficiency, productivity. Pop! OS has some unique features and customizations that might require a slight learning curve. So compared to Linux Mint's more general purpose approach, Pop! OS kind of caters to a specific niche of users who want efficiency and productivity. Next, let's turn our attention to Ubuntu. Ubuntu is reported to be the most widely used Linux distribution, and it's the foundation upon which Linux Mint is built. Ubuntu embraces the latest technologies and features, and they incorporate those features in newer software versions into a cutting-edge, innovative distribution. Sometimes their innovations, like I said, are just like, what? What are you doing? It also heavily utilizes snap packages. So if you're not a fan of snap, then Ubuntu is probably not going to be for you. Linux Mint inherits Ubuntu's stability and its software ecosystem, but Linux Mint opts for a more conservative approach to updates. They prioritize reliability over bleeding edge features. Linux Mint also offers a traditional .deb packages, and they offer a more familiar experience for Linux veterans. If you crave the latest and greatest software and enjoy the convenience of snap packages, Ubuntu is probably going to be more up your alley. Although, to be honest with you, I cannot recommend Ubuntu anymore. They have traded new features for stability, and every successive release of their software has gotten less and less stable. 2404 has so many craters in it that it's fine for servers, but as a desktop, I find it very frustrating to use. And so I really can't recommend Ubuntu to you. Linux Mint takes more care in how they do things. And so if you want the experience of Ubuntu without Snap, go to Linux Mint. If you want Snap on Linux Mint, you can install it. They have instructions to do it. So I think Linux Mint remains a compelling option here. So what do you do if you're a Windows user and you're contemplating a switch to Linux? Which distributions should you choose? Well, as I've always said, I can't pick that for you. I don't know what your needs are. If you're a gamer or you just want a system that works, or you're a developer, or you're somebody that wants to get deep into the system, there's a lot of options in Linux for you. And hopefully I've given you a start today on some places you can begin some of your explorations. But the right answer is the one you pick, not the one I pick. So if you value user-friendliness, stability, and a polished out-of-the-box experience, I think Linux Mint is an excellent starting point. It has an intuitive interface. It has a large software library. I would even go as far as to say it's pretty vast. 70,000 packages. If you can't find something that will do what you want in there, then maybe Linux Mint isn't for you, and maybe you need Arch, which has an even larger package base. Most software libraries and long-term support make it safe and a comfortable choice for newcomers and experienced users alike, I think. So some will tell you to use this Linux distribution or that Linux distribution. But if you are learning Linux, do you really want rapid change when you're still trying to learn the base and how Linux works? Do you want to go to Fedora and have everything change out from under you and new packages with new options and new controls and new ways of customizing your system being dropped on you almost every other day? So yeah, you probably don't. You probably want, give me something stable so I can figure this thing out and learn how it works before I make the decision to progress to something more bleeding edge. Or maybe you stay on Linux Mint. There's nothing wrong with that. Linux Mint is a very good operating system. And I know, like I said, I know many people have been on it for years. They've never left it. But the thing about Linux is, there's over 600 distributions to choose from. And some people call that freedom. I call it chaos. But yeah, a lot of them is like, why does this distribution exist? What is its purpose? That's what I'm trying to do today, is to answer some of those questions for you from the major distributions. Yeah, if you're coming in new, I would start with Linux Mint. I think it's a good choice, and will give you the least frustration. It has great documentation. They have release notes that will actually help you troubleshoot a new release if you run into issues because your hardware is a little bit different. Or if you're trying to get help and you're stumped, you've got a pretty friendly user community there that is willing and able to help you. So I came into Linux from Unix. And trust me when I say this, Linux is not Unix. It may look like it. It may have commands that act like it, but no, it is not even close to being Unix. It used to be that, here's what I remember. So Linux, most of us old guys remember it as Linux is not Unix. That's what the name used to stand for. Now Linus says, and you'll see this plastered all over the internet, so I'm sure I'll get comments on this. So Linus will tell you by some product of cows, a story about the meaning being lovable intellect, not using XP. And if you believe that, well, I'll see you all next time. Hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe and share it out with your friends. And I want to take a moment and thank my sponsors. Thank you so much for your support and your help and all this time and helping me be able to advance things a little bit better. And please, again, let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this format? Hope to see y'all again. Bye for now.